I still remember the exact way sunlight streamed through our living room curtains the morning everything changed. My heart was pounding before I even knew why, a sense of dread coiling in my gut like a warning. It began so simply. She made breakfast, I tried to snap a silly photo of us. She stiffened, gently nudging my phone away with an apologetic smile. "Not now," she said, acting like it was nothing, like it was no big deal. But it felt huge. I couldn't explain why in that moment. Maybe it was the tension in her eyes, or the way she curled her shoulders as if protecting some secret. Something about that refusal set the tone for what was to come, though, the quiet tremor that would eventually shake our entire relationship. If I'd known then that behind her polite decline lay a hidden album brimming with someone else's face, I might have asked more questions, fought harder to understand. Instead, I let her go, let the moment slide, never suspecting how deeply those unspoken truths would cut. I'm not entirely sure when her aversion to selfies began. In the early days of our relationship, we snapped photos constantly, badly lit selfies in front of cheap restaurant neon signs, wide-grin pictures of us halfway up a hiking trail, the odd-angled shot capturing our hands entwined. We used to laugh at how awkward we both were with the camera. She'd say things like, "Come on, let's do one more," or "Tilt your head, my side is my good side." It wasn't the sort of storybook romance you see in rom-coms, but the photos themselves told me we were happy. So when that changed, it caught me off guard. There wasn't a sudden, glaring break. More like a subtle shift. One day she'd shrug off a photo request, the next she'd say, "Maybe later," each time gentler, but more resolute. I probably overlooked the red flags because we were both busy. She'd landed a new job as a project manager at a local startup, while I was juggling graduate school deadlines. Our calendars rarely aligned, so the time we spent together felt precious. If she didn't want to take a selfie, I figured she was just exhausted, or maybe she'd had a bad hair day. Nothing to get suspicious over. Yet, as weeks rolled by, the excuses piled up. One evening, out at a cozy wine bar, I tried to snap a quick shot of us to send to my mom, who always asked for updates. She practically flinched away from the phone, forcing a brittle laugh and murmuring, "I look terrible." My heart twisted with confusion. She looked beautiful, but she wouldn't see it. Or maybe she didn't want me to see it. We had bigger challenges, too. She was under massive pressure at her job, leading a team of restless coders, often working late nights. She'd come home bleary-eyed, nursing migraines, and collapse into bed. On weekends, she'd vanish into personal errands that she never used to have. We'd drifted into an odd pattern of living parallel lives, occasionally intersecting for dinner or a silent movie night. For a while, I chalked it up to a normal rough patch, certain we'd reconnect once her project stabilized. But in my gut, a seed of worry had already taken root. It was the selfie thing that kept gnawing at me, that overshadowed all the other changes with a quiet, persistent sense of dread. Then came the day I noticed something that would unravel it all. She left for work early, forgetting her phone on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't dream of snooping, but a text notification pinged, and my eyes flicked to the screen, purely on reflex. The message was from a name I didn't recognize, Marlo. Nothing too suspicious in itself, but the snippet read, "Miss you. Yesterday was," and that was all I could see. My heart lurched. Who was Marlo? My partner had never mentioned someone by that name. A friend from her new job? A relative I'd somehow never heard of? My imagination spun wild, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Everyone's entitled to private friendships, right? Yet the seed of doubt had sprouted. I looked at the time. She'd likely be at the office all day, and a text simply reading "Miss you" was loaded. I remembered the way she'd been so evasive lately, refusing any couple photos. Could this be connected? For the first time in our relationship, I felt the tug of suspicion, the urge to investigate. My hands trembled as I picked up her phone, but I had to know. I pressed the home button. To my relief, and shame, her phone wasn't locked. She must have disabled the passcode or something. My heart hammered so loudly I could barely think. With a shaky breath, I scrolled through her messages, searching for context. I found a whole conversation with Marlo stretching back at least a month. My chest tightened as I scanned lines like, "When can I see you again?" and "I can't stop thinking about that day." The tone was intimate, too intimate for a simple coworker. My stomach lurched, a wave of nausea cresting. She wrote back in ways that felt equally personal, "I miss you too. This weekend is complicated, but maybe next Tuesday?" Another text, "We need to be careful." My heart pounded with betrayal, heartbreak, confusion. My worst fear was unfolding. She might be emotionally, or physically, involved with this Marlo. I didn't read too far, guilt and panic were mounting. Yet I needed more proof or context. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe Marlo was a friend going through a crisis. So I tapped into her photo gallery. My goal was to see if there were any recent pictures that might clarify. She and I used to share albums, but recently, she insisted on separate backups. The camera roll looked normal enough, pictures of random documents from work, a few scenic snaps from her commute. Then I noticed an icon for a hidden album. We'd both known about the hidden album feature but never bothered with it. My heart hammered as I opened it. Inside were dozens of photos, none of me, none even referencing me. They were all shots of her and another person whose face I recognized from exactly nowhere. Some pictures were innocent, just them at a cafe or leaning against a graffiti-painted wall, smiling. But then there were more intimate ones, arms entwined, foreheads touching, half-lidded eyes that spoke volumes of desire. In one, she pressed her lips to this person's cheek, her eyes shining with an emotion I hadn't seen in a long time. My throat tightened. That person had short hair, dyed a vibrant turquoise in some photos, a darker shade in others, probably a timeline of their evolving style. This was Marlo, I realized with dawning horror. I felt physically ill. My hands shook. The hidden album was full of them, over 80 pictures, all time-stamped in the last 3 months. 3 months in which she'd refused to take any selfies with me. My entire world reeled. I staggered back from the counter, placing the phone down as if it burned my hand. So that was why. She didn't want pictures with me because she was devoting her camera roll, and her heart, to someone else. A hollow ache bloomed in my chest, tears stinging my eyes. The love of my life was apparently leading a double existence. And I, fool that I was, had been clueless. For the rest of that morning, I drifted around the house in a daze, unsure what to do. Confront her? Try to salvage something? A part of me wanted to scream and break things, but I also felt numb, almost dissociated. We'd built a life together, talked about marriage, though we were never formally engaged, discussed adopting a dog, considered which city we might move to if her job soared. Yet she was off taking pictures with someone else in secret, obviously forging a deeper bond than she had with me. The heartbreak was unimaginable. That afternoon, I texted her a brief, careful message. Hey, you left your phone at home. Let me know if you need it dropped off. She replied about an hour later, calm as ever, don't worry. I'll manage at work. Thanks though. As if nothing was amiss, as if her phone wasn't brimming with pictures that spelled out betrayal. My mind spun. I decided to meet a close friend, Carla, for coffee, needing some sort of anchor or advice. Carla had known both of us for years, had seen our relationship's growth. If anyone could guide me through this sudden crisis, it was her. Sitting in the corner of a small cafe, I poured out the entire saga to Carla, my discovery of texts, the hidden album, the unstoppable swirl of heartbreak. Carla listened intently, eyes wide with sympathy. I'm so sorry, she said softly, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. This is awful. Do you think it's definitely romantic? I gave a hollow laugh. The photos were, well, let's just say it's not a friend. She's kissing them in some pictures. That's about as clear as it gets. Carla's face tightened with anger. That's so unfair to you, she murmured. You need to confront her. She can't just keep living this double life. I hesitated. What if I'm not ready to blow everything up? Maybe there's a reason for her behavior. Maybe it's a confusion or a phase. My voice trembled with desperation. Carla frowned. Even if it is, she's lying to you. You deserve honesty. If she's uncertain about her feelings, fine. But sneaking around is cruel. Her words sank in, cutting me deep. I knew she was right. The illusions of a happy partnership had already shattered. The only question was how to handle the fallout. Eventually, we parted ways with Carla promising to be there if I needed a place to crash. I drove home slowly, dreading the confrontation I knew had to happen. My phone beeped with a text from her, crazy day at work. Don't wait for me for dinner. Love you. That last phrase stung like a blade, love you, typed so casually, while she had an album full of someone else. My chest tightened. Enough was enough. I made a plan to speak to her face-to-face that night, no more illusions. She rolled in around 9 p.m., claiming an extended meeting with her boss. I sat in the living room, lights low, a single lamp illuminating the couch where I waited. My heart thundered. She kicked off her shoes, offering me a brief, tired smile. Hey, she murmured, crossing over to peck my cheek. I gently stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. "We need to talk," I said, voice shaking despite my best efforts. She blinked, alarm flickering in her eyes. "Okay," she said slowly, sinking onto the couch. I joined her, perched at the opposite end, unsure how to begin. Finally, I took a breath. "You left your phone this morning." Her face tensed. "Oh, right. Did you?" "I saw the messages," I interjected, my throat tight. "I saw the photos in your hidden album." Silence fell between us, thick with tension. Her gaze dropped to her hands, which she clasped until her knuckles whitened. She seemed on the verge of tears, but I pressed on, voice cracking. "Who is Marlo? Why have you been taking pictures with them, refusing to take any with me? Why the secrecy?" She swallowed hard, tears glimmering in her eyes. It started a few months ago. I met Marlo at a work function. We clicked in ways I couldn't explain. We started texting, then meeting up. I never wanted to betray you, but I was feeling so lost, so invisible in my own life." She let out a shaky breath, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Marlo gave me attention, passion, something I thought I was missing. It spiraled before I could stop it." My heart twisted with pain, but also confusion. "You felt invisible with me? Why didn't you talk to me? We used to be so open." She choked out a sob. "I don't know. I was afraid. You're so busy, I'm so busy. We drifted, and she broke off, covering her face with trembling hands. "I know I messed up. I lied, I kept secrets. But I couldn't figure out how to tell you I was unhappy without hurting you." I wanted to rage, to accuse her of selfishness. But heartbreak overshadowed anger. "So you decided to avoid selfies with me because, what, you felt guilty? Or you wanted to preserve your separate life with them?" She sniffled, nodding. "Every time we used to take photos, I felt like a fraud. I knew I was sneaking around. The thought of smiling next to you while my phone was full of pictures with someone else made me sick. So I just avoided it." A wave of sorrow crashed over me. The betrayal cut deep, but hearing the shame in her voice stirred conflicting empathy. "Do you love them?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. She looked away, tears intensifying. "I don't know. It's new, it's intense. But I love you too, or I used to. God, I'm so confused." Her admission stung more than I expected. She wasn't even sure if she still loved me. We sat in silence for several moments, the weight of her confession suffocating. Eventually, I broke it by saying quietly, "Where do we go from here?" She shook her head miserably. "I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to walk away, part of me wants to fix us." A sob racked her shoulders. "I'm so sorry." It was an impossible moment. My chest felt hollow, tears threatened to spill. "I need time," I whispered finally. "I can't just forgive this overnight. It's too big." She nodded, mutely, wiping her cheeks. We barely spoke the rest of the night. She retreated to the guest bedroom, and I lay awake in the master, the emptiness pressing in. The future felt uncertain, precarious. The next few days brought a fragile stalemate. We tiptoed around each other, sleeping separately. She admitted she was still in contact with Marlo, but promised to break it off if I wanted her to. Yet each time we tried to discuss a path forward, tension flared. I was torn between the urge to salvage our history and the crushing realization that she'd formed a deep, emotional bond with someone else. She'd built a hidden album of photos capturing her joy, her laughter, her affectionate touches with Marlo. That reality haunted me, playing in my mind whenever I closed my eyes. My friend Carla urged me to consider counseling, either couples therapy, or therapy for myself, or both. I broached the idea of couples therapy with my partner. At first, she was hesitant, perhaps out of guilt or shame, but eventually she agreed that it might help us find clarity. We found a highly recommended therapist named Dana, and scheduled an appointment. I clung to the hope that a neutral mediator could help us pause the heartbreak and see if our love was salvageable. Session 1 was excruciating. Dana asked us to share our perspectives. My voice trembled as I recounted the sense of betrayal, how I discovered the hidden album, how that felt like a knife in the gut. My partner sobbed, describing feeling unloved, overwhelmed, drawn to Marlo's magnetism. Dana listened intently, asked probing questions. By the session's end, I felt emotionally wrung out, but a small spark of possibility lingered. Maybe, with brutal honesty and effort, we could mend. But then a new complication arose. One evening, about a week later, I came home to find her packing a small overnight bag. My heart seized. What's going on? I demanded, panic edging my voice. She couldn't meet my gaze. Marlo's in town for a few days, she said shakily. They asked me to meet them. I need to talk with them, figure out where my feelings stand. My vision blurred with fresh tears. But what about therapy? We're working to fix us. She swallowed, eyes brimming with remorse. I can't fix anything if I don't know how I truly feel about them. I'm sorry. I need closure or confirmation. The logic stung with cruelty. She was going to see the person who wrecked our relationship to decide if she wanted me or them. A surge of anger rose, but also heartbreak. Then go, I spat, stepping aside. But don't expect me to wait around forever. She winced as if I'd slapped her, tears spilling over. I'm sorry, she repeated, shouldering the bag and leaving. The door closed with a hollow thud. I collapsed onto the couch, buried my face in my hands, and wept harder than I had in years. That weekend passed in an agonizing blur. She sent a few texts, I'm okay, or we need to talk when I'm back, but I ignored them, numb with pain. Carla came by to keep me company, giving me pep talks, reminding me I deserved better. Still, I felt torn. Part of me wanted to beg her to come back, vow to do anything to keep her. Another part loathed the humiliation of being her second choice, the plan B if Marlo didn't work out. The hidden album photos looped in my mind, fueling a swirl of rage and longing. On Sunday night, she returned. I heard the jingle of keys at the door, tensed on the couch. She approached, setting down her bag, eyes red-rimmed from crying. We parted ways, she murmured, sinking into the armchair across from me. Marlo's leaving the state for a while. We're not continuing, whatever we had. She paused, swallowing. It was intense, but I realized I can't just throw away what we built. I'm sorry it took me so long. I stared at her, struggling to read her expression. So that's it? You're done with them because they're leaving, or because you actually want to be with me? She grimaced at the question. Both. Being with Marlo was an escape from all the stress and disconnection I felt with you. But it's not sustainable or fair. I realize I want to try and fix us, if you'll still have me. A knot formed in my chest. I don't know, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes in you. You lied for months, built a secret album of memories with someone else. How can I trust you again? Her shoulders shook with sobs. I'll do anything to earn your trust back, she said. Therapy, honesty, giving you full access to my phone, anything. Just, please give me a chance. My emotions warred violently. I'd always believed in second chances, but this betrayal cut so deep. Did I have it in me to forgive? Did I truly want to rebuild? The memory of those pictures, her radiant grin beside Marlo's face, seared my mind. Yet behind my anger lay a reservoir of love and history. With trembling words, I agreed to continue therapy, to try. But I warned her, if there's even a hint of more lies, I'm done. I can't live like this. She nodded, gratitude and regret etched on her face. I understand. I won't betray you again, I swear. We scheduled more sessions with Dana, doubled down on open communication. She deleted the hidden album in front of me, tears streaming, a symbolic gesture that cut both ways. On one hand, I felt relief, seeing that testament to her affair vanish. On the other, a pang of heartbreak lingered, knowing she'd made those memories with someone else at all. Rebuilding trust was an arduous process. In therapy, we confronted the issues that led her to seek emotional fulfillment outside our relationship. She felt overshadowed by my academic pursuits, neglected when I was consumed by deadlines. I, in turn, felt blindsided because she never voiced her loneliness. We practiced vulnerability exercises, sharing daily emotional check-ins, setting aside us time free from distractions. She sent me reassuring texts throughout her workdays, no longer disappearing into late nights. If she had to stay late, she FaceTimed me from her desk, letting me see she was truly there. Slowly, a new normal emerged. Yet healing was not linear. Some days, I'd catch myself glancing at her phone, expecting to see a message from Marlo. Nightmares plagued me. I'd dream of them together, laughing while I stood on the sidelines. She'd wake to my ragged breathing, hold me, whispering apologies until I calmed. Over time, therapy guided us to talk about these insecurities openly. She encouraged me to ask questions, to voice doubts rather than let them fester. It was exhausting, but gradually I recognized the sincerity in her remorse. She truly wanted to rebuild. Eventually, we reached a tentative milestone. We went on a short vacation together, a trip we'd postponed for months. Just a weekend getaway at a cozy cabin by the lake. I was nervous. This was the first real chance we'd had to reconnect outside our daily routines since the affair came to light. Upon arrival, the crisp air and tranquil waters soothed my anxiety. We spent the first day hiking, saying little, just absorbing nature. That evening, we sat on the cabin's porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon in a blaze of orange and purple. She tentatively took out her phone, looked at me with questioning eyes. "Selfie?" she asked softly. For a moment, a lump rose in my throat. This was the moment we used to share so effortlessly. Now it carried a weight, a reminder of the months she refused any photos with me. But I saw the hope in her gaze, the longing to reclaim what was lost. Slowly, I nodded. She scooted closer, held the phone out. I forced a smile, heart pounding. The shutter clicked. We stared at the resulting image, us, side by side, eyes still tinged with sorrow, but also a spark of warmth. "It's a start," I whispered, tears threatening. She set the phone down, wrapped her arms around me. We stayed like that, letting the hush of twilight envelop us. Returning home from that trip, I felt cautious optimism. She resumed therapy with me, seemed determined to maintain transparency. Every time she unlocked her phone, an old pang of distrust flared, but she never hid it away anymore. She even changed her wallpaper to a photo of us from the cabin, another sign she was trying. Over the next few weeks, we improved communication, shared more laughter, even reignited some intimacy that had been missing. Part of me was stunned that, despite the heartbreak, we were finding a path forward. But healing, I learned, is never perfect. One night, while rummaging through a drawer for some receipts, I stumbled across an old Polaroid, her and Marlo, arms wrapped around each other, beaming. My heart hammered in my chest. She must have forgotten about it. Pain flooded me, and for a moment I considered confronting her in anger. Instead, I took a shaky breath, marched to her side, and quietly handed it over. She paled, tears welling up. "I'm sorry," she whispered, carefully tearing the photo into pieces. "I must have missed that when I cleaned out everything else." We sat in heavy silence, each piece of torn photo like a relic of the betrayal. But her immediate honesty, the sorrow in her eyes, soothed me a little. She was trying to exorcise every remnant of that hidden life. Over time, therapy sessions centered on forging a new relationship dynamic. We realized the old us was gone, destroyed the day she chose to invest her emotional energy into someone else. So we aimed to build something new, forging new ways to express love, new rituals of closeness. It wasn't easy. Some days, the memories of her hidden album tormented me, stirring anger that threatened to sabotage all progress. But each time I voiced that anger, she listened, validated my pain, and reaffirmed her commitment to never repeat such actions. Slowly, I learned to believe her again. We reached another turning point about 6 months after I discovered the hidden album. One evening, at a family gathering, someone jokingly tried to snap a quick group selfie with all of us squeezed together. She caught my eye across the table, nervousness flickering in her expression. Then, with a small, determined smile, she scooted closer to me and rested her head on my shoulder. The camera clicked. Later that night, my mother texted me the photo, and I showed it to my partner. She exhaled with relief, murmuring, "I didn't feel that usual pang of guilt or shame. Maybe we're moving past it." I felt a surge of gratitude for that simple moment, a sign that we were truly healing. Of course, it wasn't all smooth. Marlo texted her once or twice, trying to reopen the conversation. She showed me those messages immediately, short attempts at contact, "Hope you're doing well," that kind of thing. She typed back a brief, respectful reply to the effect of "Please don't contact me again. I'm working on my relationship," and blocked them. That transparency, though painful, felt like a triumph of honesty over secrecy. I respected her for handling it firmly. By the time a year had passed, we'd arrived at a place of cautious stability. The heartbreak hadn't vanished, but it no longer ruled my days. We'd woven a deeper sense of communication, acknowledging that we nearly lost each other. On a random Saturday, she came home with a surprise, a framed photo of us from our recent weekend trip, beaming at the camera, the sun behind us. I traced the picture's edges, tears prickling. It wasn't the same naive love we'd once had, but it was a love refined by pain and struggle, hopefully stronger for it. She placed it on our mantel, close to older pictures that once haunted me with memories of her refusal. Now, it felt like a quiet testament to how far we'd come. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I'll remember the day I discovered that hidden album, the rush of betrayal, the sense of my world tilting off its axis. There are times I wonder if I should have walked away, if we'd both be better off starting fresh with someone else. But then I see her working diligently to be present, open, and supportive, and I'm reminded that even a shattered relationship can be pieced together if both parties truly commit. Our story became one of heartbreak and redemption, though I'd never wish that path on anyone. If you asked me how we survived it, I'd say it came down to raw honesty, therapy, and a willingness to endure the painful process of rebuilding trust day by day. If she'd continued lying, even in small ways, we'd have ended for sure. But she put in the work, faced her guilt, ended contact with Marlo completely, and made amends in every tangible way. I, in turn, learned to voice my fears instead of letting them fester, to accept her efforts at atonement rather than constantly suspect her. We both learned that loving each other means never letting resentment or loneliness remain unspoken. It took me a long time to fully believe she was done with that hidden life. But gradually, her phone was no longer a source of dread for me. She'd leave it on the table, passcode unlocked, not in a showy way but simply because she had nothing to hide. We started taking small, silly selfies again, her messing up my hair, me making goofy faces, capturing the mundane joy of cooking dinner together. Each photo felt like a tiny victory, a reaffirmation that she no longer withheld that part of herself from me. The day she spontaneously posted one of our selfies on her social media, captioned "Making New Memories," I cried in the privacy of our bedroom, overwhelmed by the significance. Not every relationship survives an affair, and I can't say would advise anyone to walk the same road. But for us, it was a crucible that burned away complacency. She realized the cost of seeking outside validation instead of confronting her dissatisfaction. I realized I needed to be more attuned, more emotionally available, so the distance that once separated us could not so easily widen. Our bond is different now, less naive, more cautious, but also more deeply rooted in honesty. And as I stand here, gazing at the framed photo of us on the mantel, I feel a surge of gratitude that we found a way back to each other. Sometimes, she still struggles with guilt. She'll see a place she once visited with Marlo, or find an old memory triggered by a random song, and I can sense her flinch. In those moments, we hold each other, reminding ourselves that we chose to stay, to rebuild. The hidden album that once existed is gone, replaced by a shared gallery of pictures we take together. No illusions, no secrets. Looking at them, I see the reflection of two people who nearly lost everything, yet fought to reclaim love. That might not sound like a fairy tale, but it's our reality, and one we continue to shape with each new day. If you look closely, the early pictures of us, before everything fell apart, carry a certain innocence. Our smiles are wide, eyes unclouded by betrayal or worry. Now, in the newest shots, our smiles might be softer, but there's a richness to them, an unspoken knowledge that relationships are fragile yet precious. I suppose that's the best we can hope for, to learn from the heartbreak, to hold each other's hands and promise never to let silence or secrets form a wedge again. Because when I trace the lines of her face in these photos, I don't see the woman who refused to take selfies, or the one who hid an entire life in a secret folder. I see the partner who stumbled, who hurt me deeply, and who then worked fiercely to regain my trust. I see the person who wakes up beside me each morning, resolved to choose me despite all that's happened. And those scars remain, we wear them as reminders of the fragility and resilience of love. People often ask, in hushed tones, how can you forgive something like that? I don't have a perfect answer. Forgiveness isn't linear, it's a daily decision to open my heart despite the risk. It's acknowledging that her affair came from a place of loneliness and broken communication, not some malicious desire to destroy me. It's a pact we formed in therapy, to walk forward with eyes wide open, never again letting shadows form unspoken between us. Some days, yes, the old pain flares. But so does the deep relief that we overcame a storm that might have drowned us both. That's what our story has become, the tale of how a hidden album once threatened to destroy our life together, how we confronted the shards of betrayal, and how we labored, through tears, confessions, late-night fights, and therapy sessions, to build something new. I won't claim we're invincible now or that life is perfect. But we are honest, and we are present, and those qualities have proven more powerful than any curated photo reel or romantic deception. In the end, I think about the first day I noticed she refused a selfie, how that small moment hinted at a massive underlying secret. A single photo withheld led me to discover a trove of hidden images. The heartbreak that followed was unlike anything I'd known. But today, when we stand side by side, capturing a silly snapshot at the farmer's market or smiling at each other in a holiday picture, those images mean infinitely more. They're not just pictures, they're proof of a choice, a testament to a bond that, though tested, refused to shatter. And so we keep living, day by day, forging a story that acknowledges the shadows yet embraces the light. She no longer recoils from the camera. I no longer mistrust every text. We move forward, capturing small joys in pictures that reflect our messy, ever-evolving love. And if there's any lesson to glean, it's that sometimes the only way to truly see one another is to confront what's been hidden and commit, however painfully, to stepping back into the frame together.